Currently I'm broadcasting my Firefox and we'll be guessing what you're showing, but ooh.
Yes, here we go. This is Raymond Chen from the Old New Thing. Raymond's got an awesome blog where he talks about random tidbits and lore from way back in the day from Microsoft. And so this one is about how with the Windows XP, they used to have like laptops that would randomly crash. And they didn't quite know why. And it specifically would crash when it was playing one song that's made by Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation. And so like it took them a long time to like figure out what was going on. Finally, one day they noticed that like one laptop was playing the song and a laptop that was sitting right next to it crashed instead. And so what they realized was that the music coming from the song was hitting just the right harmonic frequency to mess with the hard drive platters on the hard drives that were in the laptop, causing the whole thing to crash. And
isn't it kind of amazing how like these different like it's not necessarily intuitive that you would think like the natural resonant frequency would make the hard drive actually fail, and like there's a lot of like little red herrings that I feel like we get as engineers just in general when we're trying to solve a problem. And maybe sometimes the solution is that, you know, it just is the way it is because of that's what nature intended. I don't know, like so many different weird properties that might affect something.
Yeah, and just imagine like what the fix for this would have looked like in the code. They're like, patch this by like filtering out this frequency whenever it happens because it makes our hard drives crash. How do you explain that to your coworkers?
And
I don't know.
I have a theory. I think this flaw got introduced in the hard drive in order to speed up the sales of SSD. That was the reason.
It's really a marketing play.
Exactly. Yes.
Janet Jackson, the corporate. Yeah.
Helping
some
computer
sort of
sales from 1995.
And you know,
Well,
it's
what's it called?
It's
I was
weird.
gonna say.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I heard a story a long time ago about a similar situation from a different company. So basically, I was talking to an engineer from a company. They have like stations along this pipeline that they have where they would do metrics gathering, and they had servers at these stations in order to be able to transmit that data back to like their central server. And every night they would observe a server going down. No logs, no reasoning why. And they would say, they were like, oh my God, it must be a software thing. So they updated it to the latest, they rolled a new patch out, they try to add more logging, but every night, consistently at the same time, the server would go down. So the engineer was like, oh my God, I have to drive out here. I have to observe it. Like, what is going on? Like, I can't, like, I have to be in the physical space where the server is. So they drive out, they wait until like 11 p.m. at night. They're sitting watching the server. Everything looks fine. The diagnostics look fine. The logs look fine. And then a cleaning person walks into the server room, unplugs the server, plugs in their vacuum, vacuums the server room, and then plugs the server back in, and it boots right back up.
Just, you know, for that, I have to do it.
But it's like one of those things where it's like something that you wouldn't expect. We're not solving with code, you know, we're engineers, so we always want to solve it in the way that we always solve problems. But the solution here was just to add a power strip, you know? One of those things.
You know, that remind me like very similar things, not exactly like that, but more than 13 years ago when I was working at the Samsung, we used to overtime by a lot, and that Samsung, they have culturally nature to overtime and like ask everyone to overtime. And I do remember being in the office at like 2 a.m. So everyone already left, and me and my coworker are there. We're doing some text analysis. We were working in one of the NLP things, And to speed these things up, we fired a MongoDB in memory on one of the VMs that was shared across the department. And obviously, to speed it up, we start running Mongo in memory, just in memory. So there would be no persistence, just so we can finish. We were running a quite complex fork join operation on the huge text corpus. I don't remember exactly what we were doing, but something with the text. And approximately around 3 a.m., another group that was in a completely different part of the building that also was under the assumption that no one in the office log into the VM to do some job and see that even their SSH is lagging. They run top, they saw that there is a Mongo that consumes all the CPU and memory and killed them. He killed the Mongo completely in the middle. Because, yeah, it was 3 a.m. It was kind of safe to assume that no one doing anything and there's some shape or form of a bug or who knows what. Yes, old memory. I was hoping I forget it forever, but no.
Yeah. There's another story from like my Azure days, which is like not nearly as intense as your stories, but with this one, we were like started noticing that we had like a fleet of like a few thousand machines, and we started noticing that a few machines were going offline. And like, as the day progressed, another machine would go offline. Then a little bit later, another machine would go offline. Another one would go offline, and like so on and so forth. It was just like a gradual stream of machines going offline, and there was no real like pattern towards it, except it was like a gradual thing. And like after a lot of like panicky debugging, as like our spare capacity was like dwindling lower and lower and lower, we finally realized that the thing that was causing it was that the Windows operating system's security feature was pulling in a new security patch, and it was flagging our core kernel software, like as a, not kernel, but like our core software as a virus. And it was like disabling our software as it was going along and getting up the rolling update across all the machines.
Yeah. That's just tragic. Windows Defender in general was it Windows Defender?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's so many false positives when it first came out, if I remember correctly. Like I remember there was a period of time where everybody had antivirus software, and there was like the thing that you bought, it became bundled with your computer, and then eventually Windows Defender just became like the thing. And the first couple of years, it was like everything was hit. Like you had anti-cheat, that's a virus. You have your antivirus software, that's a virus. Like Windows Defender was just like amazing when it first came out.
But it's true. Your antivirus software should be a virus, right? Because it behaves very much like a virus. It's like sniffs on your file system, it sniffs on your keyboard, right? It sniffs on your, well, it shouldn't be sniffing on the keyboard, but on the network and file system, yes. I'm actually quite surprised about like this whole industry, how it started and then turned into nothingness. Like you remember McAfee, Kaspersky, who was there as well?
Norton was one of the ones.
Norton, yes.
Yeah.
And then they all kind of ended very strangely, right?
Some of them are still around. Like if you buy a new laptop, it'll offer you, hey, would you like to have Norton antivirus pre-installed on it? Which is weird. Like,
but that's right. Like I remember I want to say back in like 2007, 2008, when I was building computers, like installing things like Malwarebytes and like a bunch of different antivirus type software. And nowadays, I just don't even think about it.
Oh,
like
that's probably because everyone with money to buy antivirus eventually bought Mac. And the rest of the folks, they didn't have antivirus back in the. They would just occasionally go to the bank once per each second month to update the card because previous somehow magically was stolen, and yeah, that was normal for them.
But also, I think Internet Explorer died because Internet Explorer security model was very early internet kind of thing, right? Like anyone can do anything. I think like when antiviruses died, the norm for the web browsers was not to run plugins in the same process as the rest of the code, right? And that like, because Internet Explorer, you download, what is it called? ActiveX extension?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
And
that's-
Silverlight,
most
and
of it was Flash.
Silverlight, right? And Silverlight, yes, and Silverlight.
Silverlight,
Silverlight,
yes.
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 And Flash,
Oh my
all
god.
these things.
Good old
Remember, you used to have to go to the Adobe website to download Flash, and I remember it being such a big and problematic thing on like computers that you didn't have admin access to, and you'd be like, "I guess I'm just not learning today." Like I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, wait. Before we move from that to another topic, I last story to tell about the weird bug that remind me when we were discussing how machine by machine would go dark, like and that was about load balancing. Yes, load balancers, hardware load balancers, and at the beginning of the scales of the internet per se, when the company that's building load balancer discovered that they can put more than one CPU core inside, they obviously had the challenge how to write a balancing software that would be truly concurrent. So the Citrix introduced under the hood a super smart logic, as usually, that will not do a round robin distribution of the traffic, but actually would try to evaluate different things: time to first byte, latency, other indirect signals that particular VM might be more busy than another one, and do distribution. And obviously all the providers and all the clouds like AWS were migrating to this logic. And at some point we have noticed that when you need to add VM or remove or add, you first need to move load balancer in round robin mode, when it just would be randomly sending traffic to machines. Then you need to add machine, and then you need to move it back to the smart distribution logic. And what we saw that when we're moving to stupid round robin, everything gets better. Like actually machine backend performs better. And that was puzzling because load balancer doesn't know anything about the backend. It guesses, so it actually doesn't know what's going on there. So how it's related to performance of the backend was a miracle, until with debugging we realized what's going on. So this magic algorithm was effectively working correctly with one core. Now if you have two cores, in the moment when you're starting the algorithm, each core would be sorting out all the VMs and do it completely separately, and then would be using exactly same logic to sort them. So effectively we have 6 core, each core would sort the VMs, and each of the 6 will pick the top one. And all 6 core will start sending traffic on the very top, the less busy VM, until it will kill it. And then all 6 at the same time will pick the second on the list, because they don't know that they're all doing the same. And that was so stupid, but nevertheless, just.
I don't know. It sounds like it's perfectly load balanced to me. Like,
yeah.
Raymond did mention the role as kind of a modern version of the Janet Jackson problem.
True.
Because if you think about it, what Rollhammer does is essentially what Janet Jackson was doing to the hard drives. It like flips the random bit of memory until you have enough magnetic currents that flip a bit that you're not supposed to, right? Oh, and he mentions the old bridge story, right? That started it all. When the military person is marching across the bridges, they don't do like their military marches.
Right.
Oh yes.
That's a fantastic video. Yes.
All right. Time for the next article.
Shoot.
So,
Man,
one-
you stop you stop sharing. I open my browser, start sharing my browser so I can show something. The moment I actually have found at least anything, you restart the chatting. Okay, let me close my line. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, I just decided I'd like close all the other tabs that I had. So, all right, so here we go. We've got patent trolls. So basically we've got some guy, he was like, he's an engineer, and he had a patent troll that came after him. And so like, you know, the patent trolls, their normal way of operating is that they're gonna send a lawsuit against you, expect you to settle in court, because if you're gonna like, even if it's a frivolous lawsuit, just fighting that claim can easily cost you like 10, 20, 30 times more than what just settling can. So most people will usually just settle. This guy, he's taking a much more principled stance. He's like, hey, I don't care if like you only want $1,000 or $10,000 from me. I'm going to spend $1 million fighting you in court to make sure that like your patent is expired. And he's taken a playbook from what Cloudflare did a few years ago. And Cloudflare's story was really cool because what Cloudflare did was that they had a lawsuit against them, and Cloudflare decided to not just try to invalidate the patent that was being filed against them. They crowdsourced the effort to find all of the patent trolls' patents and find prior art to invalidate any of these guys' patents that they would be using to sue other people. So they ended up invalidating, like, I think, I forget the exact numbers. There was like a good chunk of the patents, like, invalidating about 49 patents. Yeah, they invalidated 49 patents the patent troll had, and got rid of a whole bunch. Got rid of effectively that whole patent trolls like funding base. Because like this chart kind of shows like at the beginning the patent troll, like before they went after Cloudflare, they used to submit like about 15-ish patents a week, a month, quarter probably. They would file 15 claims against a quarter against people who were potentially infringing their patents. After Cloudflare went after them, that number dipped down to like less than 5 effectively on average, because they basically just kind of said, hey, you're coming after us, we're going to take down your entire business model, which was very fun to read about.
Man, that feels like I would love to start a crowdfunding. Like, you know, crowdfund the kill of the patent. And like randomly, this month we're killing blah. Like, just give us money to hire a lawyer.
Right, just find the prior art that invalidates this patent, and we'll submit that to the patent office and get your patent negated.
I mean, just make it a content company, really. Like, you could make a YouTube series or a YouTube documentary about how you kill all of these patent trolls and like crowdfund it through that way, and like have your viewers directly contribute to, you know, the destruction of these patent trolls. I mean, but I guess the underlying problem
Well,
here
you can
is
have
like,
a documentary on Netflix. Well, you could have with an old stock price.
I don't know about now, but like how do you deal with these types? Like, if you didn't have the resources that Cloudflare has, how do you deal with a patent troll? Like, let's say you're trying to start a company and you have an idea, and as soon as you start to become popular and you start to generate revenue, a patent troll approaches you. Like, what can you do in that scenario?
No, but really start non-profit. I mean, not you, but someone should start non-profit that would be killing it and trying to get revenue on other streams. But like, you made a really nice analogy, because there is a very popular YouTube channel, Scammers Payday, that actually trolls scammers and shows it on the YouTube. So there is so many ways to fund these type of activities. Not exactly this, but yes, some type of non-profit that will be protecting. Oh, wait a second. Even not non-profit. Let's start the insurance business. Insurance, you just pay us a small fee of your business from the inception, and like in 3 years, if something comes, we will do. Yeah, that's perfect insurance model. Huh.
I
Wouldn't
like
we
the
technically
YouTube
just
channel.
be a troll? We'd be the troll for the patent troll.
Yes.
I like the YouTube model, because like over there because people have this visceral hate against patent trolls, just like they have hate against scammers. And you're saying, hey, look, we went after this patent troll. We got this taken care of and eliminated that patent. And hey, these people over here, we're featuring their discoveries because they're the ones who showed us the prior art to invalidate the patent. And so like, hey, you want to be on the show next time? Just help us invalidate more patents.
Wait a second,
Yeah.
can't we just patent being a patent troll and then all patent trolls have to pay to us? Method and apparatus of filing a lawsuit against the random people on the internet.
But the
I would like it.
In the interesting point, what will replace the patent? So everyone these days is saying that this is obsolete, the system need to change, but what is the next patent to that all? Like the problem is still there. To motivate innovation, we should somehow allow people who bring new ideas to profit, disproportionately profit from these ideas. So patents were the solution at some point. Yes, they are abused now. But nevertheless, what would be the replacement?
So there's two problems with the patents, at least the way they're done right now. One is that most ideas, like if you look at the history of like many different inventions, like most of the inventions were not simply invented because one brilliant guy was able to think of it. There were multiple people who invented the exact same thing, maybe within a few years of each other, and they invented it independently because the situation was such that like they were able to do it. And for the telephone, we've got the famous story that like Alexander Graham Bell and whoever his competitor were racing to the patent office on the exact same day to file the patent. And so in those kind of situations, like when the invention of something is presumably is gonna happen, in that case, it feels a bit like questionable to even grant patents at all. But even if you were to give the argument that, hey, look, if you needed the patent to have anybody bother to make something like this, the patents were made back in the time where technology progressed way more slowly. Like the generation of like one technological era would last maybe 20, 30 years before you'd see like major shifts happening. For computing in specific, things change so fast. Like from 7 years from now, like the landscape is completely unrecognizable. And having patents that last for 2 whole generations, like 15 years is the limit for patents. Like having patents that last for 15 years for software feels like it's just absolutely insane. Like maybe cut it down to like a shorter time window, like 2 years, 3 years.
Don't we think for solving like America's specific problems, in many countries you cannot patent software exactly for that reason, right? Patents should be about indeed physical things, not ideas. Right, you can patent the telephone as an apparatus for making a call over like 12-volt digital line, and then you manufacture those. So if someone wants to manufacture phones and compete with you, they would be out of luck. But if someone says, we want like a phone that it goes over like 36-volt line, it's not competes with you. It's a different system. They need to build the lines and whatever, and this is fine, right? So maybe the patents for physical things, or this like kind of inventions, are still a valid thing. We just need not to patent software when the idea is indeed like sort of incremental improvements on the previous. Like you're always standing on the shoulders of giants, right? You don't implement something new very often.
You're standing on the shoulders of previous patent violators.
True.
But I think it's important to start to think about like what does the patent solve for in particular. Like the patent is there to kind of protect people who create the patent from like another big party or like a big corporation, for example, from swooping in and kind of taking the idea and making it their own. And like I think the same kind of idea might apply to software applications as well. Like let's say you have a novel idea like DoorDash, for example, where we are talking about delivery systems. We're talking about like a very novel way to do, distribution of a perishable product. And like maybe that is something that should be patented. But I do agree that like the implementation timeline that things have for patents, where, we give people a very liberal implementation time, might not make sense when it comes to software, because software can be built and iterated so quickly. We don't necessarily need to stand up manufacturing plants. We don't necessarily have the same kind of startup costs as physical products might have. So like maybe a rethinking of the way that digital patents might have to be rethought.
Maybe it's an idea of like who patents are protected, and as you said, the patent's supposed to protect like a individual who came up with a brilliant idea, so that this idea is not appropriated by large corporations.
I just realized that on the software side, the closest thing is a license. We can say anyone can use this, but you have to pay me $2 million per day, and that's it. And
have it in GPL, right? So QT for a while had like a dual license. Like you want to use it for free, you can use it for free, and you must contribute back. You want to make proprietary contributions and forks pay us money.
Jane, I think you was saying something. Yep.
Yeah, it was like we've got licenses and copyright for the software.
And the third thing, we should not forget that we now live in the world where a lot of the, at least AI things, are required a lot of the hardware. So many models that right now exist and they presumably free and open. In reality, you need a data center to run them. Even for inference, if you try to run GPT-3 ever, you will have a huge problem just to run it as a student from your garage. That just doesn't work like that. You need the data, you need to run the model, and this kind of serves that gatekeeper. So the opening it more, in the end, more a PR event than actually opening it. So you still hold the key. So yes, there are some niche in software that requires hardware, a lot of hardware.
Well, ML is actually very interesting because no one does a proper provenance for data. So if ML model was trained from data that, like, how are you going to prove it? That your ML model was, like, suppose I have a picture of a sun, and like someone grabs this picture and trade a classifier that detects pictures of sun. How can I prove that my picture was used? And if it was, like, what percentage of income that the company is generating from, like, running this model should be attributed back to me because I contribute one picture in a million.
Yeah, there is actual type of attacks that trying to recreate initial data that was used to train the model. It's an emerging field, but this is type of attack emerged after companies start using what is known as federative learning, when you actually learn on the data that you do not have access to. So then the researchers try to reconstruct the data from the model that learned on that data because they don't have access to the data to see if the federated learning actually as secure as they say it is. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of federated learning startups are dead at this point, even though there is a demand on the market, but there is many dead bodies on the market as well who try to solve it. But yeah, it's all interesting questions, I don't know.
I wonder what, like, the current patent law is for, like, especially when it comes to, like, softwares or web services. If a company is, like, claiming they're based out of a country which does not respect, say, US patent law, can they violate patents with impunity in that case? Like with Amazon, the one-click checkout?
There is no other countries. Yep. Like, there is no other countries. Why to bother? Anyway, I'm just joking. Yes.
But there are precedents, right? But essentially, what will happen is that those companies will be banned from the ISPs on this market. But that's what DMCA is supposed to protect. Like, if you want to host a lot of music that, like, is copyrighted in the other countries, that you either, like, be prepared that, like, big interchanges will block you, or, like, post a message saying that this content is not available in the company, right? This is what YouTube is doing. Like, for different reasons, YouTube does not want to figure out, like, whether this copyrightable material is available under the same license in other countries. They just say, you know, if material is copyrightable, like, you can watch it from IPs from and Netflix and everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, is it the ISPs that do the blocking, or they can do blocking though? Because I thought it was just like, say, Google search results would say, hey, this has been taken down. I didn't realize that the ISP level also would filter these things.
Well, I don't think they want to do it, but they have to, probably, because of different, like, agreements with copyright holders. Because America is interesting. We don't really have an ISPs, right? We also have a cable providers, which are the big copyright holders, or like purveyors or something.
You're in Soviet Russia, it's user who provides services to internet provider.
Yes. And party is a service.
Exactly, yes. Anyway, dear host, do you want to move us forward?
Yes. Next topic. I'm going to stop presenting for this one because now I'm talking about, the next topic is something near and dear to our heart, containers.
Oh, I thought salary, but yeah, that's also true.
But not the kind of containers we normally work with.
My cat is absent, so she could not appreciate your containers.
So This is a book I've been reading. I don't know if it shows up in mirror image for you all or not. This is called The Box, and it's the history of how shipping containers made the world smaller and the world economy bigger. And this is like very different from the kind of stuff we normally talk about.
Wait! I cannot. Sorry, apologize. But I just cannot say when you show the box and said this called the box. I felt like we are in, this introductory lesson for underdeveloped people, and like we're introducing to concept of the box. Like this is the box. Yes. Anyway,
This is a box. I don't know if you guys have this around where you guys come from, but this is a box.
Not to be confused with your dev box. But so yeah, this book is talking about how containers were used to basically transform shipping and like make shipping way easier, way cheaper, which led to the whole world economic transformation. And this is this is the kind of stuff that inspired our Docker containers and whatnot, and even like the names match was like, hey, you go to a shipping dock to pick up a container, which is where the Docker and stuff got its names from. But the way this worked was that like back in the day, like say the 50s and before, whenever you'd be sending something via ship, the ships would just be packed the way moving vans are packed. If you're ever moved, you'll see like the guys just pick up stuff, they stuff it in the back of their truck and take it to wherever, then they manually unload each item one by one. So the ships will be filled up completely the same way. And more than half of the cost of shipping an item would simply consist of the ship going to the dock, like being at the dock and hiring someone to unload and load the items from the ships one by one. And it would take multiple days to load and unload the ship. That was like the vast majority of the cost. And then like finally people figured out how to get they tried out using containers and like using a crane to lift stuff up and over. They had to fight unions and other legacy stuff that was going on. It was a lot of it was definitely not an inevitable thing for that one guy, because like he had to be doing this at the right place, right time type of a situation. But it was this kind of goes back to what Slava you mentioned often in the past, where like, hey, this guy did something well. There's a lot of luck involved with it. It wasn't just pure like skill on their part. And that's definitely the story over here as well, where multiple people were trying to get containers working. One guy was able to actually be there at the right place, right time to kickstart this revolution. But it made a world of a difference. And then with our containers, our digital containers nowadays, we're actually have a very similar mindset where you kind of pack everything up in advance. You can just download the specific container that you want and run things and use things on your own. But that was like standardizing the whole model of like how things should be going on a ship and taking it off the ship and doing so in a way that like you kind of bypass the existing bureaucracy that was blocking you was kind of the genius of the container ship.
So is there a patent for a container?
Oh, that's a good question. It's probably expired by now.
So there's a patent that was filed on August 17th, so not that long ago, so in 1948, by William R. Cole about shipping container. It looks pretty... So I guess it's a regular container when you can it talks about sections and you can use sections to do stuff.
In that case, maybe the people I'm reading about were violating those patents.
And there is a transportation shipping container, which is active. ISO approved shipping container that has a spatially rotated, molded, and thermostatic polymer container shell and encapsulated by low beer and structural exoskeleton steel container framework. There is an ISO standard for container sizes, unsurprisingly.
I'm not surprised there's a standard. I'm surprised it's ISO that's doing the standardization.
Well, International Standardization Organization, if you want to ship in containers that go across the globe, who else will do that?
There you go.
But for whatever reason, I thought about the next problem. When you mentioned containers, imagine how optimized Amazon software is about, when you load the truck that delivers your goods, they know what to put in the back, what to put in the front, according to the route that they're going into, so that, whenever they stop, they grab it from the back. So they implemented a stack in a truck. to load and unload goods.
Yeah. They must have like a very specific order, but you would load stuff. Maybe they'll even do some pre-loading because they tend to have like crates inside it. So you load this crate first, this crate next, this crate next.
Yeah, I think they color code it, right? And even sometimes on the boxes you see like a little purple logo, like green logo, yellow logo, which means that they probably been in certain order.
Yeah, there was.
I never really thought about that, but I think like this book is interesting, and like the correlation, Zane, that you brought about like Docker containers is actually really interesting, because I think in general we always gravitate towards standards if it makes sense, like, and then we don't gravitate towards standards if they don't make sense. And then like in particular, I think like shipping containers was a thing that if you had an economy that was big, if you wanted to achieve economies of scale, you would use the standard because you could build things based off of that. So you could build these shipping yards that had these cranes, that had these standard sizes for these shipping containers, because shipping containers that came from all over the world were the same size. And I think like it's an interesting parallel with software, where we look at the way we deployed software before, where we would build VM images and we would have all of these non-standard ways of doing things back into Docker containers, where we do have like a single set standard of Docker files being the way that we do software deployments. And so like, I just think that the parallel between the standards being used in both industries is actually really, really interesting.
But one thing what I wanted to add here, specifically on the standard one, the interesting observation that if you are the key and the king of the market, the company that owns the market, you actually always advocating against the standards. Like look on AWS. They were promoting their vendor lock features and they were fighting with Kubernetes. And all other clouds were saying you need to be multi-cloud, you need to have Kubernetes, because for them standards is ability to move customers around and therefore to move customers outside of AWS. Before PyTorch was popular, and PyTorch is amazingly popular now, but before it was, where was Onyx and where was TensorFlow? TensorFlow openly was saying, no, we don't want standard, because they were the main player on the market back in the days. And the rest of the tail was saying, no, we need Onyx because we need to take model and train it on one framework, deploy it on another framework, and that makes sense for everyone except number one. And the funny thing that as soon as you're becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, you re-evaluating standards. You start cutting things that's not appropriate to you, introducing something that more appropriate to you, and so on and so on. I wonder if someone would introduce the business of transportation. That person, ooh, exactly, yes. Good example for everyone who is watching the video. Nikita just showed the lightning from Apple. Yes. And everyone else has to use micro USB and now USB-C. Yes, that's the example. Anyway,
yeah, USB-C when you have the Apple Lightning connector.
Yeah, I mean, just buy all Apple devices. Like, don't you understand?
Yeah, and then it's very convenient. All I need is a Lightning connector.
And it just costs just $99 per cable. Like it's convenient.
And eventually they're moving to USB-C. So all you have to do is buy the connector. And all that costs is $39.95. Like it's really cheap.
I mean, if you can afford an iPhone, then you can afford this.
Yeah, it's a nice logo. It's a nice slogan, yes. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what PM and the Apple said. Like when director first saw the price tag, like, are you going to sell these guys the cable for $99? Yes.
But I think it is interesting, like you're saying, Slava, like industry leaders will almost always fight against standardization because it brings customers away. Like I think we see this in a lot of different software products and maybe even in like hardware products, like we're talking with Apple, where vendor lock-in is a very valuable business strategy if you're an industry leader. And like, I think it takes great consumer behavior in one direction in order to fight against that. And like, you basically just have to make it so good that people will choose to not use the industry leader. Like you have to make it so competitive and so good to not choose the industry leader.
Problem is not all industries have consumers. If you think about Intel versus AMD, right? I'm not going to say that, but in server, like in the data centers, or not really consumers. I cannot come to the data center and say, I want my 68K CPU to be stored there. They say, no, go away. Here's a standard 18-inch rack, and there's a Dell server or HP servers that based on Intel CPUs and Intel motherboard, certain power supplies that are certified. And even if AMD CPUs are more power efficient or faster, people will not install them in data center in masses.
Wait. But then comes in Apple, and everyone's suddenly building data centers with Mac Minis, irrespectively of their size, because customers need that.
Yes, because how much do you say this costs? $39.99?
Yes.
Right, because you can charge $39.99 a minute for Mac and data center, and people will pay this price.
But the counter to your argument, Nikita, especially with the data center example, is ARM64 and ARM64 CPUs and the future of data center CPU usage and fighting for a standard that's more open rather than being stuck on the Intel or AMD architecture. We want to fight towards ARM, which is more accessible by other chip manufacturers, which I think is is that a correct statement, or am I just speaking hearsay right here?
So there is a RISC-V, right? ARM is proprietary license, but yes, ARM is, you can buy an ARM architecture and you can build your own ARM-based CPUs. But I don't even know if you need to buy an Intel architecture. I guess anyone can build Intel CPUs. No one wants to.
Can anyone build Intel CPUs? It was just Intel that could build those.
Well, how come AMD exists?
No, but
okay, x86 CPUs.
x86. Yeah, sorry, yes, Intel CPUs. There's a R, right? There's a copyright. You cannot build Intel CPUs. You cannot build. Well, I can build Sony TVs, but
maybe as we talk about it, ARM is the shipping container of the CPU chip world. Maybe in the future, ARM V8 or ARM64 might be that thing where it's cost efficient, it makes sense, it runs better in data centers, maybe it runs more efficiently in terms of power, maybe it runs more efficiently in terms of compilation time,
Richard Stallman and me says RISC-V. So RISC-V is properly open architecture in terms of spec is open and reference design is open.
So really it's we had one standard before with the x86 architecture. Now we're seeing, here, maybe this might be a more efficient, a better standard to be shifting to.
Well, we had one standard before called, what is that? SunSpark CPUs, right? The original data center CPUs, they were all Sparks.
What's a Spark?
Is this PowerPC based or
No, Sun Microsystems, right? So IBM was always, I think that internet in the early days, Yahoo and whatever, was almost exclusively on Sparks, has it not?
Very likely, yes.
You probably know your stuff.
Potentially, my career doesn't date back far enough to actually know, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess we should probably, before moving, I don't know, Zane, if you have some last topic, we still can spare 5-10 minutes for sure. So if something can be fit into that, but I want to finish this one specifically reminding about amazing XKCD comics, folks. I'm pretty sure you all remember it, where there is this starting point. Oh, we have a 4 standard. We need to unify everyone. Let's create a standard. Now we have 5 standards. yes.
Yep. I was actually, for the next topic, I was going to actually ask Nikita if you wanted to talk about the bug fixes or the security vulnerabilities.
Yes. So I noticed, you probably all had to update your expensive iOS devices to the new version of software. And a week before, you had to update your free Chrome browsers to the new version of Chrome. And I think a couple of weeks before that, there was, the people who use Windows, there was also a Windows update, which was pretty mandatory, or you better update. And the funny thing is, it's all happening in the month of August. But I don't think there is some occasions that security researchers discovered it in the month of August. They're probably in industry where somebody disclosed and disclosures expire, all expired in August. And I checked earlier today, there is a pretty big InfoSec conference going on in September. So I think all these disclosures happened because all the security researchers want to publish or present at the conference.
Alternatively, DEF CON was also August 11th through the 14th, so maybe they
Maybe
all
DEF CON, yeah.
talked during that time.
So when was 1.15.1?
Oh, so this is effectively a nice indirect measurement of the conference popularity and value.
Right.
I guess so. I mean, it's so interesting how software patches go out and like the severity of it and like how do you make people update and how do you do that sort of thing. Like I think in the past, like when I've personally supported enterprise software whenever we receive a what is the software
CVE?
Yeah,
The vulnerability exception, or
CVE. Once we receive like an early indication of CVE, we'll receive like a draft CVE. It's all hands on deck. And like, but the problem with a lot of software that you run, especially OS level software, is that how do you get people to update right away? Like, how do you actually enforce that? Like, I know iOS users are typically pretty good about updating to the latest version of software. Apple's pretty good at forcing that kind of function, but like on Android, I remember not updating for the longest time. Like, how do you actually enforce that type of?
I mean,
behavior?
at Android as a user, you're often at the mercy of the distributor, the guy who made the phone, to even get an update and have it be available to you.
But at the same point, isn't it your choice to take Android instead of the phone as your primary device? You choose that to yourself.
You have to choose between like a USB-C or the Lightning connector.
But on the other hand, at the time when everyone was antiviruses, I have a PowerPC machine. Not a single thing can run on PowerPC machine. I need to compile everything from source, so no one tried to attack it or exploit it, because none of the standard software worked. It's big.
You're looking at your system D logs and you're seeing no file or directory found. And you're like, what is going on here?
I've seen a lot of people. It was a web server, and people try to like random exploits. They try to send to Apache something. It is the same version of Apache, but when you expect buffer overflow in executing a code, it says, well, it's a PowerPC code. I'm not going to do anything about it.
But isn't that the same argument or like the same thing that people were experiencing with like Mac OS? Like when Mac OS wasn't as popular or like was a little more cost dependent, most people built malware for Windows, and like Mac OS was like the safe thing to be on. And like,
yes, even though it was very unsafe.
Technically,
and that's kind of my meta point is, like we're all getting those updates, but we were kind of trusted. You see the big billboards, like when you drive to SF, like Apple means privacy, and all other company, right? The Chrome most secure browser on the web or whatever. Like, how many of those hidden security violations are lurking in our software that like we kind of sleep safe at night, assuming that people cannot attack you, but actually I bet they can.
This is like when they say like that you don't have to run faster than the bear. You just have to run faster than the other guy.
Yep.
And then you'll be fine.
And you just have to run. You have to run faster than all the people that didn't update their OS.
Yes. To be fair, I think that security next big thing. Like there is so many indications. First of all, what is in this SecOps called black swan events, exponentially growing amount of such events, just growing. There is no end of sight. And second thing, we only in the exploration stage of the offensive AI for security. Like that's going to be big, that's going to be huge, and it's inevitable. To some extent, it's inevitable that people will start doing porn with all this model like DALL-E and other. But that will be here, and realistically, we have no clue what to do about this. That's why I do honestly believe security is the next big thing, specifically AI and security. Yeah, go ahead.
It's because like the security plane for software is just so much bigger. Like the automation that you can run to perform nefarious things is just so much bigger than the security flaws that we used to see back in the day. Like if you wanted to have a garage door opener, like you had an automated garage door opener that could open any garage door, you would have to drive into somebody's neighborhood and click the button a bunch of different times in order to be able to open somebody's garage door and steal something from them. But nowadays, all you have to do is have a piece of malware that sits on somebody's computer, waits for them to log into their bank account, and now, bam, you have access. Like, it's like one of those things where the level of automation kind of makes the level of crime way bigger, or like the level of impact for a security vulnerability way bigger.
Yep.
And also we have those, right? We have our phones, which is very devised about the amount of personal information that we carry and how much we carry it around us, right? Because I don't know why I was watched. Oh, Sean Connery died not that long ago. So I was watching like original James Bond, and there was all the spy devices that looked completely futuristic back in the day. But I have 3 or 4 microphones in this little device. I have like tiny cameras. I have a tiny camera here that no one even notices, right? And this thing, I can leave it in someone's house and just listen to what they say, right? And if someone carries it in a pocket, like I have a full list of their location. And another funny thing is that this location is already traded. This information is traded by different vendors, and the government can buy this information. And it's a very interesting, clear area. Like, it used to be you need a judge's warrant to like track the guy, but now you can buy this information from Google. Or like if Google leaks this information and somebody stores it, you can buy it for $20 and violate any laws, so to speak.
And let's be clear here, Apple is not in the clear. Despite their marketing and their billboards about how privacy focused they are, they're selling your data too. They're going, like, I don't know if you guys saw the article about them doing an ads network and basing that off of the personal data that they collect from all the ads. Like the ask app not to track type of pop-up that shows up doesn't show up on first-party Apple applications. They collect all of the data. It's an opt-out for Apple applications. So in spite of what we might think about privacy, in spite of what we might think about things for our Apple devices, that doesn't necessarily apply to Apple themselves.
Here's another, even the funniest thing. How much can you trust the fact that you see the pop-up, that it's actually doing something?
Right.
But it's okay. We can trust Apple. They're honest.
Yeah.
All they want to do is sell us a $39 USB-C to Lightning, connector. Like that's all they want to do.
To be fair, if 1K phone is a price for the privacy, I know what I'm buying. And yes, you're right from the perspective that they are not ideal, but it's like democracy. The rest is even worse. Like look on the Android and other phones.
But in the Android, if you're tech savvy, you can control stuff. With Apple, right now, Apple signs their own system software, and if something happens and Apple went bankrupt, they can give the ability to install anything on the billions of devices which are currently in use to anyone who's willing to pay me the money, right? There is nothing in EULA that says that Apple cannot do that. Or at least I haven't found it.
It's a slippery slope. Like, if you have a phone, Android phone, have you evaluated the source code? Like, the fact that a specific version of the kernel that runs on the Samsung is open source doesn't give shit unless you actually read this kernel, read the source code of that kernel, and everything that compile in that phone, which is just absolutely not possible.
Which is, a compiler can do something weird. So.
I don't know. I'll have you know that I read every commit that comes from the AOSP project every day. So I know exactly what goes in there.
Morning coffee, and
2,000 commits later.
Oh, there is a typo here. Anyway, yes.
I bet you read the terms of service too.
Oh, every single time.
All right, cool. This was fun. We are at time.
Yep.
So I think this is a good time for the closing. But any last words before we leave?
Yeah, who will be the next victim? Who will be the next victim?
Next week's host.
Yes, Nikita or Eli. Someone. Ooh.
I can volunteer.
Okay, then Eli will be the next victim. Perfect. Zane, please do the grand finale.
All right, guys. This was great. Hope you had as good a time listening to this as we had discussing it. And if you enjoyed the show, give us 5 stars on iTunes. Like, share, subscribe. all that good stuff. Retweet.
Thank you, folks.
Until next time.
See you. See you. Okay, recording is over. We're still live, by the way, so be careful what you say. But recording is over. Okay, thank you, folks. It was super fun. We have Eli going next. Any last words before we adjourn? And I will start drinking.
So the next podcast is in 2 weeks, if I'm looking at the calendar correctly, the 9th of September.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Put it at a bi-weekly cadence. I think the calendar event is like weekly, perhaps, but maybe we can make this bi-weekly.
You know,
I
let's
think
do
that'd be-
Next Friday is
meta.
holiday for many of us.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's right. So we'll maybe skip the next one, but we do it the week after or something.
Yeah, let's do it
Yeah,
week
but-
after. Yes. Yes.
I think the 9th is the best day to do it.
Yep.
Or do we want to like keep it at the days that we have a dojo?
Dodo days. We might also need to make it earlier. I think Jane wanted to join in, but the timing for it is 7 p.m. her time, so in New York on the East Coast. So maybe making it earlier in the day, like a 2 p.m. Pacific time start time, might make it easier for everyone to join.
I imagining someone listening right now, like, oh, which holiday is next Friday? What is dojo? Who is Jane?
Turn that off.
Stay tuned.
Stay
Maybe
tuned,
you know
yes.
some answers. Maybe not. It's a cliffhanger, right? We like Nonintuitive.
Maybe you'll know, maybe you won't.
Yes.
Nobody really knows.
Okay, folks, we know when the next one will be, and yeah, let me press finish.